Has Britain missed the boat? Hello and welcome to CryptoMondays Monday Club, episode 1. Today I'm joined by Dr. Lisa Cameron, former MP, chair of the UK Crypto and Digital Assets All-Party Parliamentary Group and president of the Finance Club, as well as Pavan Kaur, CEO of RuleSpark, a crypto marketing and token launch expert. I'm your host, Ade Malajo. Guys, I'm just going to get into it. Lisa, you've chaired the UK's first ever parliamentary group on crypto and digital assets. Let's set it just bluntly. Has Britain missed the boat?
I don't think so. I think there's still a window of opportunity. I'm not saying that window will be open forever. I think the next year is very critical. We've been doing a lot of education. We did a huge amount from the time we set up the APPG in 2021 to the time when I left the Parliament and moved on from that role in 2024, from no debates at that point when we started to over 200 mentions. We engaged a piece of research on it in 2024. So we really took the industry from being non-existent in the Parliament to having a voice. I think we need to continue to build on that. But I do feel that since the US election and the pivot in the US with Genius Act and Clarity coming online, that the UK has to make a move now this year. The world's not going to wait for the UK to, decide on its position in this industry. The sector is going to move ahead with or without the UK, and I want to make sure that the UK is in a leadership position.
Very true. And PK, you've been deep in the trenches with founders and token launches. From your side of the table, what's the tone in the UK right now? Are we desperate? Are we hopeful? Or are we stuck in a limbo?
I think it depends on the nature of the product you're building, right? What exactly you're looking to do. I think, the idea of a startup launching a token and marking that straight into the UK, that's not particularly feasible at this stage. The cost of access for coming into the market is roughly £75,000 a year minimum. And we found a way to reduce that cost. And so that's now started to turn the tables, and certainly with our work with Solana and how they've been incubating thousands of startups together, we're almost able to join up and actually work with MPs and work with fantastic people like Lisa to really create almost a body of innovation within the confines of what we can control.
And a bit off topic, but interesting nonetheless. I actually spent part of my career in Deloitte, as you did. What do you think it is about Deloitte that attracts crypto professionals, or is it that crypto professionals are born in Deloitte?
So when I was at Deloitte, there wasn't a digital assets practice, so I might be giving away my age there. And I think, those that venture into Big Four somewhat do prefer that stable pathway, right, where they'll get qualified and then they may jump into industry or they may stay with the firm. And I think what's been really interesting in crypto, and certainly Harrison Trotter is a fantastic example of this, is that for those the more risk averse group of people that are within these institutions, what security would they need to come into a space like crypto? And so when you look at firms like Harrison Trotter or Anderson or the tax accounting firms, and how they are scaling, it creates a safe harbor almost for these professionals to come into the space. Now, I'm personally not wired that way. I came in back in 2017. I did my stint with Deloitte and then came fully into the industry. And my reason for coming into the industry was because I saw the applications of digital identity on the correspondent banks and how blockchain, not Bitcoin, but blockchain, would actually purport to change the way correspondent banks operate. And I prophesied back in 2017 that if the correspondent banks don't onboard blockchain in the next 10 to 15 years, the system would collapse. And that was my hypothesis for Cunningham.
Wow. And the clock is ticking.
Well, it's actually been interesting to see what's been happening, with ventures like Ripple and certainly a lot of these stablecoin issuers and at the settlement layer and mitigating fragmentation and everything around that. So it's good to see.
Yeah. So you're hopeful. Yeah. Lisa, policymakers are hopeful as well. Well, they sound like they're hopeful. They say we want to be the global hub for Web3. Yet so many founders are registering in Zug, in Dubai. From your experience, what's really stopping builders from staying in Britain?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. I mean, we touched on them already today, but one of them, some of the things are very simple. Access to bank account. You can't pay your staff and have a company in the jurisdiction if you can't even have a bank account. So there's certain things that we need to streamline and we need to make happen for companies to be able to set up and scale up here. There's also a thing about engagement and support. Companies will say to me they go to other jurisdictions because when they apply, they're given support through the process. And, the attitude is that they're bringing something to the jurisdiction and they're welcomed, and they don't feel particularly welcomed here. They feel like the FCA process is still very laborious. Often they don't get any response from months on end. Some tell me when they apply, they have someone who does respond and then that person leaves very quickly and they have to start again. So I think we need to look at the processes as well as the overarching framework of regulatory clarity, clear political direction. The US has that now. Having clear political direction is very, very important. To give the industry a boost and for people to have a green light to go ahead and be innovative. And the other thing I think I would add is from the overall framework of making sure that we support entrepreneurship and innovators in the country through a variety of different things, like maybe looking at taxation, looking at helping them to employ talent in the UK and to try and support their journey, because I think other jurisdictions are perhaps doing that better than we are just now, and I think we need to really step up to the mark to make sure that the innovators who are amazing, who we want to keep, want to stay here, that we're not pushing them away. And I think that it's more that they feel that they're pushed to other jurisdictions than they want to leave.
Yeah. And Pavan, when you're helping projects go to market, where do marketing ambition and regulation collide most in the UK?
It's a great question. As marketers, we're always geared to be creative, right? We want to be innovating and I think it's twofold. I think crypto marketers need to understand that there are guardrails around what they're doing. In subsequence of that, in my opinion, they can't be expected to take a bit of policy, understand what that policy means for a campaign, and how to apply it to a business. Like that's a whole other skill set, right? And so there's almost this disparity between then marketing and compliance, where marketing are really innovating and then compliance are just saying no, and that's not compliance being bad people, but they have to be that bearer of bad news because they want to mitigate those regulatory warning letters coming through that we've dealt with ourselves. And so being able to really create a workflow between compliance and marketing where marketers are able to be creative, and also there's a native level of education in the tool that they are using. What that does is that not only creates a kind of a political harmony within the business, but it reduces campaign review time from weeks to minutes. It can do so. And so this, for me, is what's really been missing in this industry. And it's not just about, what growth strategies can we do in Europe, but we can't do in the UK, and how do we map all that out, and this is certainly what we've looked at with clients, Zappo Bank, with Copper, with the Premier League as well. it's almost, okay, how do we actually take this, what your business goals, what you're purporting to build, and how do we actually get that into different markets, but also create an operational flow that makes sense for the business. And this is what's been missing, and this is what we're unlocking now.
Yeah, very interesting. It reminds me of this advert I saw on the train today. It was about a 5-line regulatory piece of text, if you like, and at the bottom was a definition in simple English. I think it was a directive by the FCA, and the simple definition was, you need to keep your receipts when you're recording your taxes. What can we do so that regulation isn't just written for the regulator, but it's written so that these builders actually understand and they know what they need to do to stay compliant? That's you, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be that engagement, I think, between policymakers, regulators, and industry. And that's what we've been trying to foster, because sometimes it feels like they're speaking a different language.
Yeah.
And then that's where the confusion arises, and people may think that they're being good actors and have the best intentions, but then fall foul of things that they weren't clear about. So I think it's incumbent on us all, and for industry to engage with their MPs to make sure that they understand how vital this industry is to the economy and to growth and jobs, and also for the MPs to be, raising that it's very vital in terms of the time frame we spoke about in the chamber, and putting some pressure on regulator to move things forward. But I think they need that communication. They need to be able to sit in that space where there's this three-way communication, and that's what we've been trying to do in the Parliament with the Legislators Forum that I've been chairing. It's bring the MPs together with industry, try to get past the terminology and into what are the use cases, how can this benefit people's lives, how can it create jobs, and why should we be supporting it, and what are the light touch regulatory frameworks that are needed. I don't particularly think politicians should be butting their way into business constantly. I think that discourages innovation. I think it should be light touch. We get a regulatory framework that works by engaging in conversations with industry, and then we let the innovators proceed with that. And I think the UK is at its best when it does that. And I think, that's why we've been a financial hub in the past, and why I know we have the talent to do this again, but we just need to get the politics moving, get the clear political direction, and help the MPs to understand that this is vital. But part of that is incumbent on industry to engage.
100%. Now, you both sit on opposite sides of the table, policy, practice. Do you think the UK's caution is protecting consumers or simply paralyzing innovation?
I think a number of the financial authorities would do well to look at what the FCA is doing, actually. And actually what we found is that the regulators cross-jurisdictionally, they talk with one another, and actually they're looking towards the UK. I actually did an opinion piece about this specific point. And so it's people see the UK as this almost like a fortress, or this
like a gold standard.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, and we're proud of that as a nation. We're incredibly proud of that. The quality of work we have in this region is the best in the world. It is the best in the world. And so I think it's pretty interesting when you're looking at kind of the scope between the UK and, as we spoke on the panel, the UAE as well. And how do we really kind of enmesh these worlds together, right? How do we actually say, okay, the UK is fantastic for this, but how are we actually driving that innovation, and how are we actually looking towards these other economies, certainly, and building those bridges? I think one thing we don't speak enough about in this region is how do we bring outside investment in. We're speaking a lot about exodus. We're speaking about a lot of people leaving. But even if you look at real estate, I mean, Qatari money is flowing through the UK, right? So why are we not applying those same conversations to crypto? And I keep coming back to this macro side, right? Because when it funnels down to practice, founders, they only really care about a few things. They care about how much does it cost to set up here?
Yeah.
How easy is it to get a bank account? And where are my investors? Where am I seeking that valuation? Am I getting a UK valuation? Am I getting a US valuation? How am I driving that forward, right?
Yeah.
So there's a few facets that kind of circumnavigate, I would say.
Yeah, I think we have to watch that we don't try to be so much of a gold standard that we do stifle innovation, because I feel like we're kind of, when I first raised it, there was a discussion that, well, the UK doesn't like to be the first mover. And I get that, right? Because the EU moved quite quickly, and I thought they were doing a good job, and they have done a good job in terms of moving so fast and so quickly. But now they've been sort of superseded by what's happened in the US, and they're having to revise what they've done. So I get that being a first mover is, has disadvantages as well. But we can't afford to be like the fifth or sixth or seventh mover. Exactly. So we have to actually move. So we have to go from talking to acting. And I think that's where we need to actually have the clarity now. And I feel like this coming year is very important. When we took the members of the House of Lords to Washington just a few weeks ago, we met with the Crypto Task Force, and they said that they want to have a UK-US sandbox. Now, there's an opportunity there, so we need to take that opportunity. And yet, I don't feel there's an urgency yet to this, and this is what I think is missing just now in the UK. The urgency.
The urgency is missing from the UK, but is it there for your counterparts in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just grabbing it and heading, and they want. And when we were there, they said very distinctly to us, thank you for coming, and we want there to be a joint sandbox. We want the UK to succeed. We have, such a strong bond with the UK. We want, to work together and to find ways to synthesize the regulatory frameworks. So I think if we could do that, it would be a game changer. Yeah. I'm not saying we have to have everything the same as the US. I feel like we'll probably fall somewhere between EU and US. But I think we need to move in the direction that something is being done.
If you go to Asia and the Middle East and you mention the United Kingdom in respect of crypto, you almost get a what did you say? Why are you even considering the UK? Yeah. So there is a lot of work to be done, but do I think that sentiment's going to change towards the United Kingdom? Absolutely. I think in the next five years, we're going to see that sentiment change, and it's going to be when the other financial authorities step up to the plate, insofar as where the FCA has stepped up to the plate. And when we see more of these guardrails cross jurisdictionally, that's when people are going to see the UK as not a stifler of innovation, let's say, but they'll see the FCA as, or the UK, as a spearhead rather. But it is a journey. It is a journey. And some say that the UK is taking a more stringent approach early on. But as someone that has got so many projects and companies out of scams, and someone that came into this space to protect retail, I also see the value. I see the value in what they're doing, protecting consumers at the heart of it.
So you think in a few years we won't be asking the question, build here or bail to Dubai?
I
don't think so. I think it might be two other jurisdictions,
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, we, like people say, oh, I'll build here or head to Dubai. The fact we're even talking about that shows we're not doing enough.
True.
So, it shows that there's an issue. Because that wouldn't even be on the table as a question if we were doing things in a way that made people just fundamentally think, of course I'm going to be in the UK.
Exactly.
So I think, when these are the questions that continually arise, we know there's a job to be done, and I think that we're only part of the way there, to be honest.
Okay. So that sort of answers my next question for you, which was, if you were advising a young founder, would you tell them to stay in London or to go to Dubai? Could you answer that?
Yeah, well, I always speak to people about, the industry is global. And I think a lot of companies are not going to just be in one jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So do I advise someone to put all their eggs in one basket? Not particularly. So I'd be thinking, it depends, what you're wanting to achieve and in what time frame, and how much funding. And I mean, there's so many different things go into that. But for a lot of companies, if things are not moving with the FCA, they may go to Dubai and set something up. Then they have a prototype to go back to the FCA and say that this is working here, and it's working well. I'm still wanting to be licensed in the UK. So I don't think one necessarily discounts the other. I think it's a global industry. And I think one of the things that I've been trying to impart to MPs is it is a global industry. So if we make it too tough for people here to be innovators, it's not difficult to pick up your computer and move somewhere else. It's not like people own a big massive factory at the end of the road that they have to disengage from. It's not like bricks and mortar. People are very mobile, and they already, if they're in a crypto circuit, they already are in multiple jurisdictions at conferences, speaking to other founders who've set up elsewhere. So they have all of that knowledge and connection already. So I think we have to be aware that the dynamics of this industrial revolution are very different. It's very global, and we have to upskill ourselves to make sure that we keep the jobs here and stop talking so much and start acting, is my message.
Very well put. And Pavan, if you were speaking to a founder about the very same topic, what piece of advice would you give them that you wouldn't say on stage?
Oh, I'm not sure there is a difference, to be honest with you. That fantastic panel we just had. I think there's a few things, and there's a lot more to consider when you're packing your bags beyond just what's best for the business. What I would say on a business level is the way that you generate business in the UK is drastically different to the way that you generate business in the UAE. If you're looking to set up in the UAE, you cannot do it from London. You can administratively to an extent, but in order to actually garner customers, if you're looking to target the UAE, you have to be over there. You cannot. It's a trust-based culture over there. It's not like the UK where it's this beautiful waltz. It's a beautiful waltz. In the UAE, it's beautiful in the sense that it's trust-based. So that's what I guide founders on that level. The other angle I come at this from is the culture and where the environment that you want to be around. Dubai is incredibly, or the UAE is incredibly pro innovation, right? So being around like-minded people, there's a saying, right? You're the sum of the 5 people that you're surrounded by. And so as a business owner, it can really then to build your entrepreneurial spirit to be in that environment, which we see is a lot stronger over there than is in the UK. So the other angle, and I speak about culture here, is we look at healthcare, we look at the weather, we look at everything in the mix. What is the UK stronger in? Culture. I think the UK has an incredibly strong culture. You go on any street in Shoreditch, Brick Lane, you name it, it is filled with culture. In Dubai, it's very good, very nice food there. It's like the best food in the world in Dubai. And so what I would really consider is as well, okay, do you have a family? Do you have a family, or are you going at this solo? I think that is a very big factor, right? Because you've got to consider healthcare, education, and everything like that, which it's just good in the UAE, but it's a different structure, and the weather is different over there. So there's a lot more than packing a bag and going. I've lived there, so
so you know it firsthand. I think though, like other jurisdictions as well, like people are looking to the US there, which is maybe easier for people in the UK to pivot to culturally. Also, like Singapore is very diverse and rich in culture, and so there's a lot of options for people. We have to make sure that UK is a good option for people.
And I think there needs to be. This is done for clients, right? There has to be a way for founders to be able to see, okay, here's my options in the UK, here's my options in the US, here's my options in the UAE, here's my options there. And again, that lack of democratization around knowledge is a fundamental problem in this industry, because what we may find is more business actually coming into the UK if that education is provided, and if that cost of access does come down, and more alliances between jurisdictions as well, just like Lisa spoke about earlier, right? And so having, AI infrastructure such as RuleSpark that actually lays all that out in a way that everyone from a founder to a lawyer can understand, it helps just join up these dots, Yeah,
very good. And very nice smooth plug for RuleSpark there. I see what
gotta get it in.
But Dubai is often called regulation light but fast, while London is rigorous but slow. Which of these models, if either, do you think genuinely builds sustainable businesses, not just for short-term token hype? Either of you.
Again, I say it depends on the business, right? Because you could have everything from a small token issuer to a custodian to an asset manager. And so, it comes down to what is the actual business model. And I think with the UAE, and one thing we mentioned on the panel is that Dubai has been known as this, as you call it, regulation light, right? But actually, VARA, the Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority over there, which kind of came up in the last few years, they've actually started enforcing the marketing rules. They issued 19 penalties recently, and so that is a green flag from a regulatory perspective. But to the point on the UK side, again, it depends on the nature of the business. If you're a small token issuer, perhaps the UK isn't the right route right now. But if you're a larger institution, and this is something we're working with Hedera and Solana and other blockchain protocols on and Hashgraphs, what exactly is the target audience that you're going for? That's what we come back to. Is your target audience Joe on the streets? And then you want them to get their token, or is your target audience a sophisticated investor?
Sure.
So it comes back to target audience, business goals, what's the setup, everything in the mix.
So what you're saying is, if I want to launch a meme coin, I go to Dubai. But if I want to,
and you don't tell me about it.
But for the decentralized asset management firm, I come to you.
You could say that, and I would caveat with there's lots of interpretations of what a meme coin is. Depends on how it's structured and everything in the mix. But I think the world of being able to launch without thinking of consequences is slowly coming to an end in Dubai.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and it's for global companies. They're setting up in UK mainly.
Yeah.
And they can do it. And I think the shame of it is that, the smaller companies are feeling they have to leave. Yeah. And I think, to be fair, the next, great innovations, Facebook, all these types of things, Apple, I think they're going to come from the startups. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to see those leave the UK.
Exactly.
So I think we need to get this balance a bit better between innovation and compliance. Yes, we have to have a consumer protection focus. Of course we do. It should never be a race to the bottom in the UK. But we also have to have space for innovation. And I think that's a very fine balance. I don't think we have it correct just now. I think it's very much, the scale is weighed very much towards regulation. You would have to have infinite amounts of money to go through this process just now, because you just don't know how many years it's going to take. So you can't actually operate.
Sure.
So if you're starting up a business, then, where are you going to go? So again, it's this pushing away the innovators. And most of them saying to me, I was educated in the UK, or I grew up in the UK, or I want to create jobs in the UK. They don't want to move to the UK. So we have to step up to the market and make sure that we give them the space to innovate, because I think, we actually already have a good history in this sector. We had Gavin Wood come to speak to the Parliament. Most of the parliamentarians were very shocked. He's from the north of England, and that he's been at the forefront of this industry.
Yeah.
And so we already have people who have done big things
100%.
come from the UK. We're not championing them, and we're not kind of claiming our space in this industry yet, and I don't think it's all happening in the US, or it's all happened in the US. I think we need to be much more courageous and say, actually, we've done good things here. We want to do more, and we want to create that space for innovators to remain in the UK and to, develop the next fantastic innovation of the digital revolution.
And there's actually compliant growth strategies that you can do to enter the UK market without having full authorization, but that's a conversation for another time. And I think what we've been seeing a lot more of is this intersection of AI and crypto. And the rules around AI are actually, interestingly, pretty strong in Europe. But in the UK, we're actually seeing a lot of innovation around AI right now as well. So the other thing I would say, because one of your earlier questions is how am I advising startups, is before issuing a token, if we're talking about startups, before issuing a token, get the commercials right in your business, launch the business, get revenue generating, build PMF,
100%.
And then look at launching a token.
Yes.
And then build that token economy in a way that purports to be sustainable and meet the business goals. That's the order. And so damn right set up in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we want to hear as well in the parliamentarians even want to hear more about use cases for good, so blockchain for good examples, for maybe you're streamlining healthcare systems or things that make an impact on people's day-to-day lives. Because sometimes I think the sector feels a bit abstract to members of parliament, and we don't quite get why it's important. So apart from the obvious growth in your digital economy, I think there are also going to be these use cases that emerge that really demonstrate the utility of the industry in terms of social impact as well.
Yeah, and will things like real world assets bring it more to life? Like, let's say real world assets with real estate, or real world assets with gilts, for instance. Will that form a much more tangible connection with real life?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It reminds me of when we took some of the MPs to one of the first tokenized apartments on the Thames, and they were asking me afterwards, they were saying, is the apartment okay? As though the foundations or something had been affected by being tokenized.
Oh,
so there's still a bit of education, I think, around it. But yeah, I think just bringing it to life and it being incorporated into things that people are already familiar with is helpful. And one of the use cases, I was over in Copenhagen last week at Blockchain for Good Alliance conference, and with UNDP, and they were talking about aid money being on blockchain and it being a bit more transparent for taxpayers, and also being able to evidence that the funding gets to the vulnerable person it's intended for. So I think those types of cases are ones that you don't have to be a tech person to understand, and I think that those are helpful.
Very true. And Lisa, you've shifted across political parties and industries. What did that teach you about conviction, reputation, and risk-taking? And does any of that mirror what founders go through today?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be able to change your mind about things. And I think you should base it on evidence, and things in life do change. And if you said to me when I was working as a psychologist, over 30 years ago now, starting out, one day you'd be an MP, I would have been like, no way will I be an MP. Because, in my school and in my background, people just didn't become MPs. So, yeah.
How were the NHS before?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then like to go from that to then being in the parliament, and of course I thought, well, what will I do? I'll do what I know, I'll do health, to ending up in crypto. Wow, how does that happen? But a lot of these things happen and you have to take opportunities and learn. And I think like your whole life's journey is learning and adapting and shifting. If the evidence points you in a different direction, I think that's fine. I think if you just stay in the one position despite all of the evidence pointing in a different direction, then you're kind of like a Luddite, aren't you? You're not going to shift with the change. And this industry is fast moving, it's fast paced. So actually I feel it's given me all new lease of life in a sense, thinking about the next generation, the jobs of the future, how all the frontier technologies I feel are going to converge, and why we need to get our education system up and running and ready, and make sure that young people have the skills that to achieve their best potential.
Yeah, exactly. I think crypto has a way of bringing people from diverse training into this melting pot of innovation. I myself am a computer science by background, but somehow I find myself cutting checks for early stage founders. And PK, you've built your career helping projects launch lawfully and at scale. Do you think the next major crypto boom will come from jurisdictions that remove barriers, and that the UK could become a footnote if it doesn't move faster?
I come back to what I said earlier, right? It all depends on PMF, and does that PMF align with the jurisdiction you're looking to dredge into? And I think that the UK has done a fantastic job of setting a standard as to how to protect consumers. I think that other jurisdictions are fantastic in the sense of creating quick routes to market as well. So like offshore structures like BVI token issuance. It's not advice, by the way. BVI, please don't take this advice. BVI token issuance, like Cayman Foundation as like an operational wrapper that sits on top of that. And then going from offshore to onshore, right? So from like an investment bank's perspective, every step that you're taking as a business should be designed to increase the consideration size of your business. Whether or not you're looking to exit, whether you're go to IPO, whatever the desires are of the business, and whether or not you actually want to do that as well, that should be best practice how you are running your business. And so going through those doors, you're looking at different jurisdictions. Okay, I need to get PMF ASAP. Should I set up offshore? Let me get my market validation. Should I set up offshore? Let me get some clients in. Let me do this. Let me do this. Let me do this. But I'll do it in the right way. I will stay outside of regulatory scope, and I'll take the steps to do that, because you have to take steps to do that. And then coming onshore. And what we've seen from an investment bank's perspective is that gaining a license, whether offshore or onshore, helps to increase that consideration size. And so what I want to come down to here is whether you are launching offshore or onshore, there are rules, right? So I know we touched on the panel that DeFi is out of scope, but in order to be a DeFi protocol and be out of scope, you have to take measures. Else the warning letter comes through and I get a phone call. So there's a use case for different jurisdictions. And I think, to my point earlier, in the next few years, the UK is going to become more appetizing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I think it has to be, and I feel like if it doesn't, I think this sector will definitely be a key issue at the next election. You're looking at, potentially voters at 16 at the next election in the UK. Young people are very natural with everything being digital. Sure. Of course, finance is going to be digital. It's natural to them. And I think like when we started 2021, it was like 4 million. Now I think the estimate's 9. I think by the next election, it could be 15 million people in the UK engaged in the sector. And then if you look at that trajectory across all the different constituencies, that could be a swing vote. So if you are a pro-tech candidate, you might be more inclined to get the votes of the constituents in your jurisdiction. So I think this will become an important sector, and I think the MPs just don't realise that yet.
Oh, I hope they listen to this podcast. So, but looking ahead to the next UK government, whichever party it is, as you've alluded to, do you expect digital assets to really, really be taken seriously, or will it just continue to be performative consultations?
I personally don't think we can afford for it to be performative consultations because other jurisdictions are moving ahead. And I think in order for us to move ahead the way we want to in AI and some of the other frontier technologies, quantum, it makes sense for this all to kind of be worked on together. As a kind of jobs and skills of the future package for the public. And so I feel like we have to get this right. And as I say, I think the populations will start to ask questions. If they're engaged in the industry and they don't feel a government is supporting their work, they're going to try to find out which candidates from which party should I be rooting for. And I think that will then become one of the issues for the election.
Do you think the candidates are going to say one thing and do something else as soon as they get into power? Or do you think it's actually going to be that serious that they follow through?
I suppose there's always a risk of that. Even with good intentions, sometimes things don't get done that you would like to do when you're in government. But I think this will be a very important sector for growth. And I think whichever government comes in will recognise that growth in the economy is going to come from industrial progress, and that industry is progressing in this direction, and it's growing exponentially, really. Therefore, it would be foolish not to include this in your manifesto, for instance. We didn't see that at the last election. I think most parties should have something about this sector in their manifesto.
100%. And PK, if you could change one thing, whether it's tax, whether it's marketing frameworks, anything to make Britain genuinely competitive again, what would it be?
Well, I'm slightly biased, aren't I? So I might say marketing frameworks, but that boils down to regulation, and I think regulation is the starting point before policy and tax. I think it starts with regulation, and I think for me, in the UK right now, there's a few things, right? There's that lack of democratization of knowledge. There's a lack of how do I actually come into this market to begin with, and what are the legal pathways for coming in as well, and everything in the mix. And so I think at a marketing framework level, let's say as it pertains to the financial measures regime or the FSMA more broadly, I think it'd be interesting to see what framework or how frameworks could potentially evolve to reduce that cost of access or keep it low, or at least work with providers like us to really create that bridge to build innovation. The founders only care about a very few things. I said this earlier. They care about where are my investors from? How am I valuing my business? Where are my customers? And what is the cost of getting into that market? And the minute they hear the cost, that is it. That they're out. And to Lisa's point around banking as well. So for me, that all funnels from regulation. And so an evolving framework that purports to support that cost of access would be fantastic.
Amazing. And a question for both of you. For the founders listening who believe Britain can be their home to Web3, what's the one decision they should make in the next 90 days to know whether to build or to leave?
I don't think that there'll be one decision, but I feel like the first thing they should be doing is going along and tapping on the door of their MP, talking about what they're doing, saying, how they want to create jobs and growth and support the government's objectives in that respect. And then asking the MP to raise in the Parliament that they've met with them and what type of company they are and what they do. And I think then the industry will become more prominently discussed in the Parliament. So I think that's really important, because only when you're mentioned in Parliament repeatedly Does it become a priority? So it sounds funny to people because they just think they just have to do one thing. It's actually, you have to do it over a period of time. And I don't think the organisations working on it, it's not being mentioned a lot in the chamber right now, and I feel like there's much more work can be done. So I'd like to see industry engage locally.
I think the best business owners are the ones that take a risk-based approach to what they're doing, but also are not perfectionists, because perfectionism kills business. And so in kind of tandem to speaking about the risk-based approach, again, I'm looking at, okay, we're speaking about startups here. So have you spoken to, beyond local MP, have you sought out the local incubators? Have you looked at local accelerator programs? For example, Solana has this fantastic super team endeavor, like across the UK. They have a number of these hubs. And so as part of those 90 days, I'd be saying, well, have you explored any of these incubators? What is that community like there? What is the support that you're getting? Because the support requirements for each business are different. How is it structured? Does that make sense for you? And is the community there designed to help you grow and designed to help you give value yourself? And are you happy fundamentally? And doing the same in Dubai, right? And timing it, let's say past these 90 days, it's token 2049, jumping on a plane and really seeing what the difference is, and you have to almost expose your nervous system to these different environments to be able to see it. Like, you can't, I love a whiteboard, like I'm known to be in front of a whiteboard, but you have to go to the regions yourself. So in those 90 days, I would suggest, as well as contacting a local MP, I would suggest looking at the local accelerators, the incubators, and going to both jurisdictions and actually experiencing it for yourself at the right time in the year.
Very important answers. And we're going to close off with a quick rapid fire round, 1-minute answers. So, Lisa, Bitcoin or stablecoin? What protocol look for?
Longevity. They both have longevity in their own ways.
Yeah. Okay.
It's different ways. Yeah.
London or Dubai?
For food, Dubai.
Are you
For
sure you're
culture,
not
the
a politician?
for culture, the UK. For launching a crypto business, starting offshore, aiming to come in onshore.
Right now, Dubai.
And politicians or VCs, who's harder to convince?
Convinced by what?
About the merits of cryptocurrency and capping stable regulation.
I think no politicians. I think it's more general accepted now. Just like there's an engine that kind of what you. And I think the political aspect is mainly about education.
Okay. Pavan?
I think I agree with Lisa, politicians. What I would say on the VC side is we are seeing some liquidity problems across a number of VCs across Europe specifically. And one thing that we've been looking at doing is actually, how do we tokenize LP units and create a lending facility and actually create liquidity around that fund to incentivize the GP, the LP, and the entire ecosystem. That's something we're working on right now. And so I think it's for the VCs, right now they are balancing liquidity more so, do we want to come into crypto or not? It's more, how do we do it in a way that makes sense? That's what I'm seeing anyway.
Best advice ever received.
And receives. Gosh. I mentioned it earlier, you're the sum of the people you surround yourself with. And this matters particularly in business.
Lisa?
I think my mom said, like, be a doctor or a lawyer. She never said be a both. But you never go with your friends.
And if you could write one law for Web3, what would it be?
You're looking at me right here off the Web3. I don't think I would write the law for Web3. I think I would get the experts in to help with that. But I feel like Web3, when the kids came in from the Children's Parliament, they were talking about like their whole education shifting with Web3 and it being so interactive. So I think I would like to see people working on educational solutions for young people to make sure they have access in the UK, but also globally, to be honest, because there's so many people who don't have access to technologies and they can't fulfill potential in the same way. I think like access to the internet, web, of course, needs guardrails, but I think like we can, the kids were talking about, you wouldn't just read about Henry VIII. You could go back in time and you would be like in the court of Henry VIII and you would have experience of it, not getting your head cut off or anything like that, being a wife or whatever. But, or you'd be in the precipice of a volcano and you could see the lava. And so I feel like there's so much that we can do to try and fulfill our promise to the next generation to make sure that they get the tools they need for the jobs of the future.
Very well put. Pavan?
I think it'd be interesting to see something like an RWA license in onshore markets like we've seen in the UAE. I think it would also be interesting to see how decentralized autonomous organizations, a real validity in structure and recognizing that as well, and similar to property rights around that. And I think that, again, that would support with investment coming in, and I keep coming back to whatever is going to reduce the cost of access into different markets.
Very important.
There's only so much I can do.
On that note, thank you so much to both of you for an amazing episode 1 of Monday Club.